Joining me today is iconic screenwriter of horror classics Hellraiser 2 and 3, as well as Hellraiser Bloodline, Wishmaster, as well as cult live-action manga classic Fist of the North Star. Please welcome Peter Atkins. How you doing, Pete? Are you all right?
I'm fine, Matt. Thank you very much. Thanks for the invitation. Glad to be here.
Oh no, it's a real honour to get you on here. To be fair, I mean your career's just been insane, really. Like for as regards to like horror legacy and stuff, So it's an incredible.
That's very kind of you, mate. Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you're a first Brit on this VHS Icons. So congratulations.
Oh, okay. Well, fly the flag, fellas.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, but yeah, I'd like to get into like the beginning. I tend to try and start as early as possible. I tried not go if I can get too deep, like, but I'm looking into it. I like the sound of the dog company. That sounded like a hell of a hoot with like you and your mate. Yeah. Can you explain the dog company and just like how awesome was that for you?
Well, I mean, it was great. It was, you look back and there's certain things turn out to be defining moments in your life, but you usually don't really quite realize that at the time. Because, looking back, you think, my God, Doug Bradley, Clive Barker, Peter Atkins, they all met one afternoon in Liverpool, and look, they made the Hellraiser movies 10 years later. And but it was just at the time, it was what you were doing, you know what I mean? Like most things. And it was really again, like most things, it was just a fluke of connectivity. Because I'm trying to try and make this as smooth and anecdotal as possible. I was a working class kid from Liverpool, and but I passed my 11 plus, so I got to go to a posh school. Do they still have the 11 plus, by the way?
That's a new one for me.
It was a way. I mean, it was really class based. It was a way to keep the oiks out of the fancy jobs. You took an exam when you were 11 coming out of junior school.
Right.
And it was called, it probably had a more official name, but everybody called it the 11 plus.
Okay.
And if you passed it, you would qualify. This is so boring. I'm so sorry. But you got to go to a school where they would teach you more academic subjects as opposed to the secondary moderns, later replaced by comprehensives, where they would teach you what they thought your blood destined you for. Woodwork, metalwork, getting you ready for the factory floor kind of thing.
Right.
But anyway, so I passed my 11 plus, so I got to go to a school where they taught you Latin and French instead of woodwork and metalwork. And we had a little high school band going. I mean, a rock band, not a brass band, school band.
Sweet.
And I'd fired the drummer who was in my year. Can't remember why. Probably couldn't keep a beat. Anyway, somebody told me this 40-year kid could play the drums. So, being a loudmouth arsehole, I just walked up to, because he was 2 years younger than me, so I could bully him. So I just walked up to him in the corridor and said, "Hey, Bickley, I hear you play the drums. You're in my band now. We're rehearsing tonight." And his name was Graham Bickley, who went on to be later a sitcom star and a West End star for a while.
Oh, wow, sweet.
Yeah, right. But despite my brusque approach to him, we became great mates. And after a few months, he told me, "Oh, you should meet my sister's mate, Clive, because he's just like you. He reads books." Yeah. And this is all obviously, this is the ancient days of the 1970s. So, there's no internet, there's no phone texting. I'm not even, I hadn't gone to college yet, so I'm not sure my mum even had a phone in the house. Anyway, by word of mouth, Clive and I arranged to meet in Allerton Library. There should be a blue plaque up there now, but there isn't. And it was June 1974. You can cut all this out afterwards in the edit if you want, Matt. But on that memorable day, yes, I met Clive Barker, and about half an hour later, I met Doug Bradley. They were both they'd gone to a different school with Graham's sister, hence the introduction. And in the same way that I had started to try and get a rock and roll band going in my school, they'd started trying to get a theatre company going in their school. They'd done a couple of productions at school. They'd made a Super 8 movie, which I was very impressed by. I was like, oh, you actually went ahead and did something. And it was just the way you do when I guess I must have been 18. Clive was 20, I was 18, and Doug was 19. It's 1952,
Sweet.
1954, 1955, for what it's worth. Um, but the way you do at that age, we just sort of instantly decided. I mean, we clicked, you know what I mean? It was like we had all the stuff we loved, we had in common. Comic books, movies, especially horror movies. Um, so we just decided we were gonna,
Just
work together.
start the
And just,
production
we're
company.
kids. No
Yeah.
money. Yeah, yeah. I mean, and like I say, they were ready to start it anyway. I happened to look in right at that moment. But like, and a month later, we were after somehow we'd managed to get ourselves a slot at the Everyman Theatre in Liverpool, and we were doing shows. So we had a series of pretentious names first, which I was like tried to talk Clive out of. I was very pleased when we ended up as the dog company because I thought that sounded cool. But when we were every man, we were the theatre of the imagination. And then after we'd seen Lindsay Kemp's a couple of Lindsay Kemp shows in London, we just decided again, like little arseholes, who are we to say this? But we just said, oh, we're going to be a mime company now. So then we became the even more pretentiously titled The Mute Pantomime Theatre. And for a year or so, we just did plays without words. Um,
Wow.
and then eventually we thought, well, this is silly because none of us are trained mime artists and we suck. Um, so we brought back the word and we became the dog company. So long story short, then I was with them for another 3 or 4 years. We all moved down to London in 76, 77, sort of thing. Um, and we did fringe theatre venues down there. And yeah, it was a great time. Um, of course, you always edit out the bad bits, because when a group of people are together, there's always like little rivalries, little enmities, little romances, little this, little that. So I'm sure at the time we were driving each other fucking insane, the way groups of people do, whether you're in a band or any sort of organized thing. But yeah, in retrospect, it was delightful. The whole thing was fantastic,
So this
and I've got
was
to. I always say I've got to give Clive this. Being a working class kid, my assumption, not necessarily explicit assumption, but my assumption was that I would probably end up teaching English at a school somewhere. I didn't think, I didn't believe maybe that people. This sounds like a big sort of cry for the proletariat. I'm not trying to make a political or sociological statement because it's my fault, but I just didn't assume a life in the arts was for the likes of me, except music, because obviously coming from Liverpool, the Beatles, you did know that pop music was open to anyone, which is, I guess, why I had a band going in school. And that was really the only way I thought you could get into this stuff because I thought people that made movies and people that wrote books, both of which I somehow magically ended up doing. But I don't know. I thought it was for middle class people with leather patches on
Is that
the
it?
elbows of the jackets, you know what I mean? And anyway, what I'm saying is that Clive, certainly for me, and I believe for Doug and Phil, Lynn, and Julie, and Anne and Graham and other people that had been in the dog company, Clive was really the guy with the self-belief and the one who sort of implicitly and to some degree explicitly said to us, "Fuck that, we can conquer the world if we want." And I like to think that all of us had enough talent that maybe we would have found ways in without that. But he was the best at that. He was the guy who just thought, well, why shouldn't we do this?
Yeah.
So,
He didn't do
yeah,
bad in the end, did he? So yeah,
no, he did all right.
yeah, that
Yeah.
belief there for him. So I mean, when
Yeah, exactly.
so obviously, like this was the 70s. So when did you first come about then? With obviously Hellraiser was being written. It was based on a Clive Barker book or short story, or at the time. So
Yeah.
was you still kind of in touch with Clive Barker leading up to the
Oh
first
yeah,
movie?
yeah.
Yeah. So
Oh yeah, it wasn't a coincidence. I didn't just audition to do and then have Clive say, "Wait, I know you." Um, yeah, no, I left the dog company in I think 1980 or 81 actually to move back to Liverpool to form another band to have another go at rock and roll. Um, but Clive and I obviously stayed very close friends. Then he had met a young producer. Well, in fact, somebody who wanted to be a producer, a guy called Chris Figg, um, who was the guy really responsible for the whole Hellraiser franchise happening. Not because he thought it up, that was Clive, but Chris
just
and
get
Clive met. I wasn't there. Met at some mutual friend's house in London and decided, just like in a way, the same sort of attitude that we'd had in Dog Company 10 years earlier. Just that, well, we'll do this. Um, and Chris had apprenticed himself by doing crew work on some movies, so he had some connections in the business. Um, but uh, it was him who, when they went and pitched what became Hellraiser to New World, a company that any VHS fan should know because there's
yeah.
a lot of their movies were on VHS eventually. But they pitched it to New World. Or I guess Clive pitched it in terms of it would be a movie about blah blah blah, and New World said no. And Clive, who, like I say, is not bashful, but he's also a gentleman, so he took no for an answer. And was ready. Oh,
Really?
well, thank you very much. I was ready to walk out. And Chris, and this is the difference between creatives and producers. Chris, God bless him, just said, no, wait a minute, wait a minute. And he just browbeat them in. I wasn't in the room, so I can't give eyewitness to this.
All right.
But Clive always acknowledged that Chris just basically talked them into it. Just said,
Ah,
"You're wrong. This is going to be a hit movie for you. And let me tell you why." All the stuff that born salesmen are,
yeah.
are,
Gift it,
are
Gab.
meant to do. So at that point, yeah, New World said, "Oh, fuck it. All right. We'll let you make the movie." So obviously, I believe Clive would have gone on to great success anyway. But technically, it was Chris Figg that got the
Wow.
franchise ball rolling. So they'd made Hellraiser, and they formed a little company, Chris and Clive, called Film Futures, and they wanted to be the next Hammer, next Hammer Films,
Wow.
UK-based horror film specialists. And that was the dream. I mean, and obviously, he cast Dog from
Yeah.
Dog Company, in a small role in Hellraiser as the lead Cenobite. So he was already bringing the boys back. And
yeah.
then Chris had a couple of projects he wanted to do. So they wanted to do a sequel to Hellraiser, but Chris wanted Clive. There were a couple of other projects, one of which eventually became Nightbreed, but it wasn't necessarily that, but they needed other hands to make the sequel to Hellraiser. So
Yeah.
they
So
did actually. This is very. Oh, I'm sorry, mate. Go ahead. What'd you
no,
say?
no, I was just going to say. So you was in the background of Hellraiser One then when it was
Well,
starting.
I mean, I was hanging around because my mates were
Yes, because
making the
it's your
film.
mate. And
Yeah, right.
so were you like kind of dabbling in with the writing, the screenwriting, and like maybe doing something on the
Oh, see
side?
what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to get like then the
Yes.
job of writing the sequel, yeah, that's like
Oh, yeah, yeah, yes.
that's
No, you're
massive,
right.
isn't
You're
it?
right. It wasn't completely out of the blue. I had um and I apologize because I've told this story before on other podcasts. So if people are kind enough to listen, you just got to bear with me while I tell this bit again. Um, I'd turned 30 and I realized, sadly, Matt, at that point, if you're not already a rock star, you're not
Hmm.
going to become one. Uh, if you already are a rock star, 30 is no problem. But I sort of realized, oh, fucking hell, 30, you're not, can't see myself getting on top of the pops as a newbie with this. So I mean, I'm joking, but I'd started, I mean, we'd all dabbled a bit when we were in Dog Company, but I started writing some stories. And because my mate Clive had been successfully published, I, of course, sent a couple off to him saying, do you think these are any good? And he was great. He was very nice about them. But also, um, see, what I didn't know was that in the background there'd been this thing where Chris said we've got to get on the sequel to Hellraiser, which I wasn't particularly aware of. So when Clive calls me back to say nice things about the stories I'd sent, what he also said was, "Have you ever written a screenplay?" Because we had made a couple of little indie movies on 16mm back in Dog Company days.
Yeah.
Um, so it wasn't a completely out of the blue question, but technically, obviously, I'd never written a professional
Wow.
screenplay. And he said, "Have you ever written a screenplay?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, listen, a producer's going to call you in 5 minutes, and he's going to ask you this question. So just lie to him, all right?"
I love it.
Swear to God, it's the truth. And of course, being a Scouser, so by nature a criminal, I said, "Yeah, of course I'll lie to him. You bet." And 5 minutes later, Chris Figg called me. I guess technically I might have met Chris a year earlier on the Hellraiser set. I don't have any memory of it, and I don't think he did either, but I did visit the set. So I might have met him. But anyway, he called me and asked me if I'd ever written a screenplay. Oh, Clive had sent him a story to read so he could at least tell that I could put words in the right order in a sentence.
Yeah.
So he knew I could technically write. And he asked me if I'd ever written a screenplay. And I said, "Oh, yes." My favorite form. Yeah, I think I exaggerated somewhat how many independent movies we'd made with Dog Company.
All right.
And I'm not sure whether, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether we fooled him or not. Because Chris is a very, very smart guy, great guy. And so whether we actually fooled him or whether he could tell damn well that I was lying, but he enjoyed the conversation and perhaps the confidence. Um, and basically just said, well, tell you what, let's pop down, let's have much posher than me and Clive, who's a posh
Really?
lad, who's Chris. Oh, yeah. Um, and he said, "Well, pop down to London, we'll have a chat." And which is one. And the other thing, and again, I have to be honest with this because it's sort of luck as much as talent. One of the reasons he could hire me without me having any true prior experience was the pound was so weak against the dollar in 1987, international exchange rates and shit, the kind of thing we pay no attention to. But the pound was very weak against the dollar. So when Chris called New World to say, "Oh, I've got a writer for the sequel," it wasn't really much skin off their nose. It was like, oh fuck it, pay him. You know, it wasn't. It didn't cost them as much as it would have done a year or two earlier or a year or two later.
Right.
I mean, I tell that story sort of as a joke,
Yeah.
but it was true that New World were throwing their money around a little in 1987, particularly in the UK and maybe Europe generally, I don't know, because the dollar was so strong that it was like money for jam for them
No
for
way.
for a brief period.
Chuffing
So I
hell.
think, so I like to say I owe my career to the collapse of the pound sterling in 19.
I like it.
But anyway, yes, so that's what
So
happened.
that's that.
And yeah,
So obviously the first one was like a massive success. Surprised a lot of people for its
mhm,
budget more than anything and what it made. So
yeah.
you're coming in. You're basically like in charge of writing the script of the sequel. Was Clive Barker, was he on hand a lot to kind of help you out with this, or was it were you left on your own to basically write this to extend this whole
Oh,
new world really?
sure. Well, I was left on my own to write the whole thing, yeah, of course, because as I say, Clive was busy. But um, uh, we we came up with the story together in one. Like I don't want to be reductionist about Clive's involvement. Obviously, it's his baby. He
Mm,
he created. Well, we didn't know. I don't think we even used the word franchise back in those days, but he
no,
created the franchise.
yeah,
And he was his credit on Hellbound is executive producer. So once I was writing, and then later again when the movie was being shot, Clive wasn't there all the time. Chris was the producer. Chris was there all the time.
hmm
But prior to me writing a word, I nipped over to Clive. I mean, weirdly, it really was just like we flashed back to Dog Company. I went over to his flat. He opened a bottle of whiskey. And obviously, you know, he had some ideas anyway. He'd done the first one, so he knew kind of like the first thing he said was, it's got to be a real sequel that picks up the second, probably because we'd all seen Halloween 2 a
yeah,
year or so before, and we liked the fact that Halloween
continuation.
2 started immediate. Yeah, I'm putting words in his mouth. I have no idea whether he thought that way, but he did want it to be an immediate sequel. And he had a couple of ideas, obviously.
hmm
But we opened the bottle of whiskey, and I think I tend to say in these stories, 3.5 hours later, I've no idea if it was 2 hours, 5 hours, whatever. But we opened the bottle of whiskey, and later, when we had emptied the bottle of whiskey, we had the story that became Hellbound. Now, none of that involved writing, obviously. It involved, well, what about if? Just two old mates firing ideas back and forth. And
Right.
look, again, let me admit, him very much taking the lead. Again, it's his baby. But
Mm.
we the miracle is that I woke up the next morning and could fucking remember what we talked about because we did finish the whole bottle. Um, but in terms of process, what happened then was that was Clive's major contribution because he had these other projects he had to do. So I went very bleary eyed and foggy headed. I got back on the train to Liverpool and on a manual typewriter, because this is what sort of ancient history we're talking about, Matt. Green manual typewriter. Um, I wrote down, as well as I could remember, the story we'd come up with. And, you know, in the trade, they call that a treatment, which is basically you're telling the story of the movie without any dialogue, without any flavor, just sort of this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens.
Okay.
So I knocked out a 5 or 10 page version of that, sent it by mail, I think, not even by fax, because again, we're, you know, in the Middle Ages here. But I sent that to Chris Figg, and Chris had smart notes because he's a smart guy. but I didn't even revise the treatment. He had the notes, but basically said, "Great, it's good. Let's go to draft." So they brought me down to London, put me in a hotel in Hampstead, and Chris said, "Can I have a draft in 3 weeks, please?" And
Wow.
I said, "Yes," because I didn't know any better. I thought 3 weeks sounded quite generous, actually. But and um, and I've never had as good a work habit since because I was aware. I just did the math. I thought, well, he wants it to be between 90 and 100 pages long. So if I do 4 pages in the morning, have a bit of lunch, and 4 pages in the afternoon, I can have the weekends off and do the. And astonishingly, and I'm telling the truth, I've never been that efficient since. But I did. I just because I figured
Wow.
this is your shot, mate. Don't not get him what he wants. So I got him a draft in 3 weeks. And then I think we did and then he and Clive gave me notes on that draft, which I
Yeah.
incorporated into at least one more draft. I think two. I think I'd done 3 drafts before they hired Tony Randall, who had been a production executive at New World when they were making the first one. So then they hired Tony to direct, and he and I clicked immediately again. We're still very close friends to this day. And so yeah, I think it was the fourth draft. So I did the fourth draft with some input from Tony. Like we'd meet and have lunch every day.
Yeah.
Uh, he was in a much posher hotel than me, which was really infuriating because
Ah.
once we were friends enough for me to make snide jokes like that, I said, "How come Chris is paying for you to be at the fucking con?" It wasn't the Connors. What was it called? The Meridian. I said, "How come Chris is paying for you to be at the fucking Meridian and I'm still in a Holiday Inn?" And and Tony said, "Oh, Chris isn't. It's he." Tony hadn't. I think Tony technically still had a year of his employment at New World as a suit to go. So it was actually so new. So his expense account as a New World executive was what was paying for the hotel. So
Wow.
that's the
So
sort of trivia nobody is interested in. But sorry, I just remembered it.
no,
So yes, so Tony was great. So Tony and I then, I mean, again,
so things are starting now, aren't they? Like some
well,
things are developing.
technically, once Tony's in, we weren't technically in what they call pre-production, but they've got this phrase which is sort of like soft pre-production, which
Yeah.
means Chris is starting to hire people, talk to people. Obviously, Bob Keane and Jeff Portis, who'd done the makeup so brilliantly in the first one, they were coming back, so they were
Yeah.
signed up. And Chris had, I think, had already made the deal for to get to shoot at Pinewood, which was a thrill for movie fans because the first one they'd made, as I'm sure you know, just at a small little production unit. I think literally called the Production Village in Cricklewood, and obviously the house was a real house that
Yeah.
they rented, ruined, and but we were going to shoot this one at Pinewood, which is thrilling because that's where they made the James Bond movies and the
Yeah.
Carry On movie.
That's massive.
So it was like, fucking hell, that's
Was it? Was
also the
it?
funny thing was I'm jumping ahead a little. When because this has happened, then there was another various things. The first time I came down to Pinewood, um, before we were shooting, but when the sets were being built, I came on and I had to walk down to the soundstage where our sets were, and I walked through Gotham City because they'd just finished shooting Tim Burton's Batman.
Wow.
So I'm like walking through Gotham City,
No
thinking,
way.
"Fucking hell, I'm in the movie business now. Look at this."
That's
So that was nice.
crazy. That's yeah,
Yeah.
well, that's awesome. I didn't realize it were filmed in Pinewood. To be fair, so that's awesome. As it when it comes to writing it, so obviously Doug Bradley they gave an incredible performance in the first one, and like you say, he was
Yeah.
literally just like the impact of the limited time he had is just like it's unbelievable. So was there much talk where we need to get this guy in more. We need to push this character because I'm assuming the fans of the movie, like horror fans, have just taken to him so much. Was
Sure.
there any discussion of like, let's get more of him in this film, because it's still quite limited in the sequel as well, isn't it? The
Yeah.
second one, yeah. So because obviously it's about
No.
Dr. Channing and stuff, Channard and that. So yeah. So
Yeah.
was there much discussion about
Not as much as you'd think, because you're quite right that the first one was successful, but it wasn't out yet. When it had not been released when I
that?
was
Oh, before they
writing
started prepping the
at
sequel.
least the first draft. Say again?
Oh, so like
What'd you say?
it wasn't actually released when you started discussing the sequel. Do you mean?
It wasn't released when I wrote the first draft. I'd finished at
Wow.
least the first, possibly the second, but so what? And it's interesting that you bring it up, Matt, because um, what Chris and Clive actually had intended was that Julia, Claire Higgins' character, that Julia would be the thrill. I mean, obviously, Julia is very important in Hellboy. That, as I say, Clive had some ideas before I started writing, and that was one of them. That this would be Julia's progress through to Queen of Hell, so to speak. Um,
Wow.
so I know it sounds stupid in retrospect. No, I mean, not. It doesn't sound stupid to make movies featuring Claire as Julia because she was fucking great.
Yeah.
But I mean, it seems stupid that what Chris and Clive didn't realize was how big an impact Pinhead was going to have. So their plan was that, if we're going to have a Freddy Krueger franchise character, it's going to be a woman. It's going to be Julia. And the Cenobites would be, the servants of hell
Yeah.
beneath her. Um, and it does seem weird because, now the image of Doug in that makeup, Jeff Portas, should always get a name check here because he was the original designer and applier or applicator of the makeup. I mean, because it's all those things. It's the great lines Clive wrote for him. It's Doug's brilliant performance, and it's the makeup. It's just a striking image.
Yeah.
Um, but no, they just figured that was a passing monster. I mean, obviously the Cenobites were in the sequel I was going to write. I mean, basically, it was the story you all ended up seeing.
Yeah.
So it's not like I didn't know to feature him. Um, but the theory was Julia was the through line. At some point between the first, second, or third draft, New World released the movie, and of course the poster is Pinhead's face. And so it's the poster and the success of the movie, and it's just very clear that what the public want is this guy's the fucking franchise. So, and actually that didn't really have any impact on the script as I wrote it all the way through production. In fact, the movie ended with the resurrection of Julia from the mattress. Right now, the movie everybody sees and has seen for the last 40 years, the poor workman is sucked into the haunted mattress, and the pillar of souls, the torture pillar, rises from it. But it was meant to be Julia. And we actually, not only did I write it that way, but we shot it. Footage
Wow.
exists of Claire in a fabulous black dress, rising. I guess she was on wires, was lifted out of the thing. And that was
Wow.
going to be the end of the movie. It's like, oh shit, Julia's back. Queen of Hell, we're in trouble now. And then two things, as I say, so we shot it. It wasn't like we cancelled that idea, despite the imagistic success of the pinhead look. Um, so we hadn't cancelled that idea at all, but we knew Pinhead had to be very important. And then another thing happened, which was, and I'm sure she doesn't mind me telling this story, Claire let us know that she really wasn't interested in being the female Freddy Krueger. It's like, fuck you, I'm off to join the Royal Shakespeare Company, which, by the way, she did and won awards and was there was a famous production of Antony and Cleopatra where so yeah, so she went off to join the RSC. She had a very different career in mind than
Wow.
Chris Figg had. And I teased him about it for the next 3 or 4 years because I said, well, it's the way you fucking pitched it, Chris. You don't say to somebody who's auditioned for the RSC, do you want to be the female Freddy Krueger? She's going to tell you to sling it, isn't she?
Yeah.
Um, but as I say, Chris is a very smart guy, and I'm sure that isn't the way he pitched it, but it's the way I like to tell it.
Yeah.
But anyway, she was not that was not the future she had in mind for herself.
Wow.
So the Pillar of Souls is actually was a reshoot. Um, and again, sort of interesting Hellraiser trivia, if there's anybody interested in Hellraiser trivia, but when the Pillar of Souls comes up at the end, because it was a reshoot, I don't know why Doug wasn't around, but um, you see Pinhead's face at the bottom of the Pillar of Souls,
Yeah.
and it's not Doug Bradley, it's Jeff Portas, the guy who did the makeup. That's
Wow.
Jeff in the Pinhead makeup, bottom of the pillar.
Wow.
And I don't know if it was just, oh, let's not bother Doug, it's only an afternoon shoot, we'll just do it. I can't remember. Or whether maybe it was after, no idea. And like I say, it's 40 years out, you remember these things.
Yeah.
But
Was
it's but
it?
technically, trivia footnote, that is Jeff Portas as so the first guy to not be Doug Bradley in the Pinhead makeup is Jeff Portas,
Wow.
not the Pinheads they got later in
Jot that
in the
down.
direct to VHS sequels. Yeah,
Get that down for your pub quiz questions out there. Then,
for your
like, yeah,
quizzes. Yeah,
yeah, awesome. No way. Was there much pushback from the kind of the studio? So obviously, um, yeah, working with the creative team for the sequel and all this kind of stuff, you've got this idea of
yeah.
expanding this world. Yeah, I'm assuming the budget was still quite limited. So how, yeah, what was the creative wise that they couldn't really go with? Like, did you have to adapt quite a bit for it?
Well, weirdly, not really. I mean, it's a good question, and the truth, and I'd like to tell you, Matt, that it was good old Pinewood British ingenuity. We just found a way around, but it wasn't that. I mean, it was budgeted. We were careful. They did. We had a higher budget to begin. I mean, it was not a high budget, but it was. I think it was people lie so much about the fact, the figures. Um, they lie to the public that it's higher than it was, and they lie to the banks that it was lower than it was.
All right.
So, so the truth of the figures they name is always somewhere in between. But roughly speaking, Hellraiser, I think, was about a 500,000 budget, which is low budget.
That's crazy.
Um, I think we had 1 million for Hellbound, which is
Wow.
still low budget, but it was 1987 or 88 by the time we were shooting it. Um, so it wasn't micro budget. It was like low budget, but
Yeah.
I don't know what you call it, but it
It's
was it was
it's
twice what we had, and all the people involved. Not me. I am brand new to this, so I can't work this shit out. But Chris knew what he was doing. The department heads knew what they were doing, and Tony knew what he was doing. Tony Randall had been brought in because apart from anything else, he'd literally been an executive on the other side of the finance issues. So he was very good about knowing. Yeah, in fact, he would give me pragmatic advice on that when I was doing the redrafts. He would say, like, try and make that scene 2 pages, because if you do it two instead of the three, I can shoot it in one day. I mean, That's just an example I'm making up.
Yeah.
What I mean is Tony had a mind, knew how to be aware of those things in a way that I didn't necessarily. Um, and in fact, that came very much to the forefront when I always say 2 weeks before we started shooting. But again, I'm just making that up. Could have been 2 months, could have been 2 days.
Yeah.
But
Fair
shortly
enough.
before production, um, you're probably too young to remember, but there was a mini Wall Street crash, not like the big one in 1929, which led to the Great Depression, but they called it Black Tuesday because the stock market just fucking plummeted. And remember what I said earlier about New World could throw money around because the pound was weak against the dollar. Suddenly the dollar was in trouble.
Wow.
Um, so we did have a sort of, yeah, it was only about 2 weeks before. That's right, because Chris Fig got me and Tony on a conference call and announced this, that effectively the budget had been cut in half because of the collapse of the dollar.
No
And
way.
I'm freaking out. Um, but again, because of Tony's experience, he was, I thought, oh my God, I'm gonna have to do a whole read and I have to take out these scenes and blah blah blah. Um, and Tony was very calm about it and said, no, 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 just write the draft you were writing. Um, I'll shoot it faster, or again, like the example I said earlier, we'll compress it. But
What?
we did have a budget crisis just before it started, but we didn't really.
You didn't have to adapt it too much
I'm trying
then?
to think if there were any. There were no sequences we lost. There
Wow.
was, yeah, we just, I don't know, made it work. I
That's
mean,
crazy.
partly because, I mean, seriously, the various people that we had, because we had these, older, experienced people working with us as well. Dickie Marden, the film editor, had been John Schlesinger's editor. I mean, not that Dickie can do a lot to help with the budget, so I'm sort of sidebarring there. But I'm just saying we've got Robin Vidgeon shooting it, a great cameraman, worked with Ken Russell. So you've got people with real pedigrees, who
Yeah.
are a little whereas, little neophyte me is like, fucking hell, we're screwed. Um, but they're seasoned professionals who are going to maneuver any budgetary issues. So they handled it. And Robin's great, Dickie was great, image animation are fantastic. So all the makeups. And we also had, again, for an old movie nerd like me, the guy who did one of the reasons Hellbound looks bigger than Hellraiser is because we were at Pinewood, we had access to all, the big studio tricks. Like, shame we didn't have a drowning scene actually, because they've got a big tank there. But they had Cliff Cully, who was a matte painter, or what these call a glass artist, um, who'd been working out of Pinewood I think since the late 40s. Um, he'd worked with Powell and Pressburger, legendary filmmakers out of Pinewood. He'd he'd done glass shots for From Russia with Love. So, it was thrilling to have people like that. So what I'm saying is the whole labyrinth thing,
Yeah.
Leviathan hovering in the sky and the overhead MC Escher landscapes, that's all painted on glass by Cliff Cully and his son, I think, who still continues the business to this day,
Wow.
and a very small team. So I mean,
So
I'm
it's
really
just
sidebarring into saying,
there's
"Wow, we were working with these great old pros," but
just being creative with
we
a
were
small
we were
budget.
in good. Yeah, right, right.
Yeah.
They could make all that work. So we really didn't have to make many compromises actually.
That's
And
amazing.
just to go back to the way you actually originally phrased the question, Matt, New World, unless unless Chris Fig was protecting me from, New World didn't blow a gasket about there was no point at which they read the script and said, "Oh, we can't shoot this. This is
Yeah.
way too expensive." So
Wow. So
no, it was, yeah.
How fun was it writing for the Julia and Dr. Channard characters? Yeah, because it's interesting. Like, so when he becomes like the when he turns into the big Cenobite, if you like, when he has a
Yeah, right.
transformation, and it comes out with like some kind of Freddy Krueger style one liners when he's like, when he comes in, bursts into the hospital scene, and so
Mm.
he's got like a bit of a cheekiness to him compared to say like Pinhead, where he's almost like a Shakespearean thespian with, it's like
Sure.
the way he delivers his lines. So yeah, writing for like say Julia and Dr.
Yeah.
Chernard, like what was it like for the thinking of the obviously like the
Sure.
contrasts of the characters?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the key to having a good time when you're writing anything, I think, Matt. Because if you wrote a movie in which everybody was like Pinhead, um, it would be, it's like with music, it's like with painting, it's like with anything. Tension, release, contrast, highs, lows, dark, light. You want as much of a wide palette, wide range as you can get. And I mean, you're absolutely right. It's like I never had, I never consciously instructed myself while doing it. But that's a really interesting contrast that you make between Julia and Chenard and Pinhead and the other Cenobites. Well, I mean, only Pinhead and the female speak, of course.
Mm.
Oh, but that's interesting. So it's two couples. So you got Pinhead and the female, and you got Julia and Chenard. And you're absolutely right. What I was unconsciously, almost consciously doing was when I'm writing for the Cenobites, yes, you think grandeur, splendor, tightness, pointedness. So you do think Shakespeare. And when you're writing for Julia and Chenard, you think Noel Coward drawing room comedy. It's like because they're very arch, especially Julia. And
Mm.
I think actually at one point, I one of the notes I got in between the first and second draft, and I think it was from Clive, not from Chris, was actually okay. The Chenard and Julia, it's a little too arch. It's verging on camp. Pull it back a
Okay.
bit. They liked it, but yeah, it's that you do, and again, then for example, you have another male female thing because you got the young Kyle working with Kirsty from the first movie.
Yeah.
Um, so and with so yeah, not it's not really conscious when you do it, but yeah,
Yeah.
you pitch the stuff accordingly. It's like you don't have Kyle and Kirsty talking like the male and female Cenobite. You don't have Chenard and Julia talking like young 20-year-olds.
Yeah.
But
So
the
it
more
has its
the
own
more range of
challenges.
yeah, I mean it's not really a challenge. I mean that sounds arrogant, doesn't it? Yeah, of course it's a challenge trying to do a good job. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's the fun of it really.
Mm.
You get to do this stuff, then you do a bit of this stuff, then you do a
Okay.
bit of that stuff. Yeah.
So quite right. So it's quite
But yeah, no,
straightforward.
it was, and the pleasure, because the thing is, it's one thing when you're writing this stuff, obviously in your head, the best possible actors in the world are going to deliver your material. But the thing is, as any playwright or any screenwriter will tell you, you are at the mercy of the actors ultimately, because um, later in my career, there were a couple of moments where I thought, wish they'd cast somebody else in that part. Um, but not in Hellbound. It was,
No, it's a solid
I mean,
cast, isn't it,
obviously,
all
I knew
around?
Doug was going to be great, and also I knew because of Clive's model from the first movie, I even if I hadn't known Doug personally for whatever it was by then, 15 years, um, I would have known how to write for Pinhead because I had the example from the first movie. And what was I going to say? Oh yeah, but I didn't know who we were going to get to play Chenard.
Yeah.
Um, and again, we knew we had Claire, so I knew Claire was going to be great. But uh,
So it's a fingers
it,
crossed
it is a
moment
great
then.
sense of relief, when you hear Ken Cranham deliver, but both as the human Chenard and as the slightly joyous Cenobite Chenard. It's it's great. You just think, oh yeah, that could have sounded so bad in
Yeah.
the hands of a less talented, which is always the truth with Doug as well. It's like, people are always very complimentary, both about Clive's dialogue for him in the first movie and my dialogue for Doug in two, three, and four. Um, and we'll take the compliment. It's nice, but it's so much Doug's delivery.
Oh,
Because, again, if
100%.
some hack, you know, you can write as many piss elegant Shakespearean lines as you want, but if you don't get somebody to sell it with commitment and seriousness, and he's doing it behind plastic. Well,
Yeah.
technically later, but
I mean,
it's a tough call. Go ahead.
no, I'm just saying it like the way he's growing into that role now. I managed
Brilliant.
to meet him at HorrorCon last year
Yeah,
and stuff, and a lot of that's was taking up, I think, a lot of his time now because he's worshipped. I mean, the cues for him, it was such an
it's
iconic character.
astonishing, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's but like you say, the way he delivers that role, you can't. I know they've obviously played with it in the more modern Hellraisers and that,
yeah,
but
yeah,
um, I don't know the politics behind why he hasn't managed to continue with it. Like, but as regards to we can do that role in his sleep now in his delivery. Like, no matter how bad the sequel or the movie, it's his performance is always on
yeah.
point. Yeah, so he's an incredible character. Yeah, he's a great
Oh yeah,
actor
no,
to be him.
no, absolutely, absolutely great. And actually, I've got nothing to do with this, so I'm not tooting my own horn here. But he's playing Pinhead again in this game that's about to come out. I'm not involved with it, but I think it's called Hellraiser Revival.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I've seen that
and
hovering
it's
around.
a video
Yeah.
game. So obviously Doug's not in the makeup or anything. It's all
So he's been doing
we
all
must be
the
careful
voice
not
and
to
the.
say AI. It's CGI animation. But Doug voiced Pinhead again. So
Oh, brilliant!
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Oh, that's
and
amazing.
we've he lives in Pittsburgh, not LA, but so we don't hang out in person as much except when he comes into town for conventions. But we're old mates, so we text.
Yeah.
And I said, off the record, was it all right? And he said, I figured I was just doing it for the money, that I'd just come in and say some silly lines. But he said, no, it was really good. It was a full script, and I felt like I was,
Wow, going
back
back
in
into.
back in the Motley. Yeah,
Wow,
he liked it.
awesome.
He said it was great.
Oh, I'll have
I
to
mean,
look out for
like
that.
me, he's not a gamer, so he's never going to play the fucking game, and neither am I. So I can't
But
I
he
can't
respects
say
it.
Doug says it's a good game because he wouldn't know. But he did say
They've
it
put
was
a lot of
good
heart
working
and,
with
and
him.
thought into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So,
also, as I
no, sorry.
pointed out to him, that means because both he and I revere Boris Karloff, and Doug's sort of very, not in a bad way, but is very conscious of, in a way, the legacy of being the Brit who comes to Hollywood to play a recurring iconic monster role. So he likes to think of himself as no, he would never be so arrogant as you know analogous to Karloff, let's say that.
Oh,
And
nice.
I mean, that's one reason why there's that famous backstage photo of him at Pinewood in the talk about Noel Coward in the fancy dressing gown with a cigarette in his hand with the pinhead makeup on.
I've
And
seen that. Yeah, I've
yeah,
seen it's
and
gone around. Yeah, I've seen that.
oh yeah, exactly. And one of the reasons he loves that photo is And he did it consciously. I think he asked me for the fucking ciggy when we took the picture, actually, because there are photos on the set of Bride of Frankenstein from 1935 where Karloff is relaxing on a chair with the makeup on
Nice.
his face, but with a ciggy.
I love it.
Yeah, so I think Doug wanted to get a matching shot, you know.
I love it.
But that's what I was going to say. Doug hadn't realized, and I thrilled him when I pointed this out to him, that the last time Boris put the Frankenstein monster makeup on was, and it was just a pull-on mask, sadly, was in a TV episode of it was in an episode of the TV show Route 66. Quite a well-known episode among horror geeks because the the protagonists of the show are just like two guys crossing America on Route 66. I don't really know what the basis of the show was, but in this one episode in 1964 or 5, probably the Halloween episode, they meet Basil Rathbone, Peter Lorre, and Boris Karloff. So it's like a lot of these classic monster actors in this one episode of Route 6. I'm wasting so much of your time here, Matt. I'm sorry with all this
That's so
sidebar.
I'm saying I love it.
I don't know, but horror fans should probably enjoy this shit as much as I do.
this is
Um,
it.
but anyway, this is the great news for Dog. So that was the last time Boris wore the Frankenstein monster thing, which is I think 64 or what. Anyway, I did the math, and because the first time we did it was 1931 for Frankenstein. So Doug, having just played Pinhead in 2026 in this video game, now surpasses Karloff's record for playing the same monster because
Wow.
from 1986 to 2026 is whatever the math is.
It's
What is
40
that?
years,
40
isn't it?
years. 40 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Whereas Boris only managed 32 year stretch from 31 to 62. And Doug was made up when I pointed that out to him. In fact, I was surprised. I
And-
was surprised. I thought he'd be on social media the next day bragging about it. But, maybe
to be
he's waiting
fair,
until the
though,
game's out. Maybe he's waiting until the game's released and then he'll.
I mean, to be fair, he's put a bit more graft in as well in his role, for instance. So seems a bit more of Pinhead than there is of Frankenstein. So yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But going on to obviously Dimension Films then took over for Hellraiser 3, didn't it? Um, what?
Not quite. Not quite. What we made Hellraiser 3 independently,
All right,
And then Dimension came
distributed.
in as distributor.
Right, okay,
And once they did that, they then made an offer to Larry Cuppin, who's the guy whose company made Hellraiser 3.
right,
So they only owned the franchise after Hellraiser. They released Hellraiser 3, it became theirs, but we'd already made it.
okay. Ah, okay.
Technically, the only one, well, not the only one that was made. Obviously, they made all the direct-to-video sequels, but the only one we made for Miramax was Bloodline, was Hellraiser 3.
Oh, okay. So when it came to obviously writing the script, it gets moved into the US at this point now, and so as regards to what they wanted to do as for the franchise, was it tough to adapt writing the script? It's tonally completely different. You obviously got more of Pinhead as well and stuff. So
A
what
lot
was
more.
what was the discussions for the script as regards to that then? Because it's going into like a whole different era now, weren't it?
Sure. Um, well, you're absolutely right. Technically, it wasn't Miramax. It
Yeah.
was it was a company called. What happened was New World went bust. Um, not because of Hellbound. Hellbound was a hit, but but I guess some other movies were they must have overextended themselves. But so New World went bust and or went bankrupt, and as ever, those finance people they divide the spoils when this happens.
Right.
And a guy who'd been at New World, a guy called Larry Cuppin, um, I think I'm right in saying he'd been in the legal department at New World rather than the production side. But for whatever reason, when they were divvying up who gets what when New World dissolved, Larry Cuppen got the Hellraiser rights. So he had a small production company called Transatlantic. And so it was Transatlantic with the people we made the movie that I wrote the script for
Right.
and we made the movie for. But nevertheless, your point stands that we were suddenly we were not not at Pinewood. We were working directly with an American company, um, and they were going to shoot in America. Um, but I don't want to I don't want to paint them as villains. It was Larry Coppin and the producer he'd hired was a guy called Larry Mortoff, um, or as I liked to briefly call him at the time, Mr. Lindsay Wagner, because he was married. Well, actually, they were already divorced by the time I met Larry, but he had been married to the Bionic Woman, which I thought was very cool. Um, so, so it was Larry Copeland and Larry Morton. They were the guys we were working with, and the plan was that it was going to be the same creative team. It was going to be me and Tony Randall. We were, we were going to make Hellraiser. I was going to write it. He was going to direct it, just like we'd done Hellbound. Um, and so Tony Randall was with me all the way through development on that. Um, and like before we get round to blaming any executives, if people aren't happy with with some of the content of Hellraiser 3, then me and Tony should take some of the blame. Because what happened, I hadn't moved here yet. I was still was I in London? No, I was back in Liverpool. Um, and we had this, well, what are we going to do? Because you see, the problem was Clive wasn't involved because Larry Coppen, I believe I'm legally allowed to say this at this far distant stage. Larry Coppen wouldn't meet his price because Clive's value had gone up in the marketplace. I
Yeah.
realize this is very crass and very disappointing to Hellraiser
I can
fans.
see that it seems a little bit sensitive. A few politics may be involved,
Ex exactly, but well, no, I think it's even crasser than that, Matt. I don't think it's politics. It's just fucking money. I think Clive said, I want X.
Yeah.
And Larry Coppin said, I'm not fucking paying you. Um, I
Right.
mean, don't get me wrong, he would have paid him. There was a brand name value to having Clive involved, obviously. And
Yeah.
Larry Coppin's not an idiot. But apparently he was tight. So so he wouldn't meet Clive's price. Whereas Tony and I work cheap, so we were in. Um, but I mean, actually, kidding us, I'm saying it very lightly, but obviously that was kind of a crisis for me because it was like, well, fucking hell, if you, obviously not that Larry Cuppen was firing Clive, he just wouldn't.
Hey,
Clive was asking too much money,
it still
but
gets in on a executive producer's credit as well, don't it? It's still on.
well, you see, there's a story about that. Uh, but he wasn't involved at all. So the first thing I did was I called Clive and said, "Look, they've offered me the gig to write number three.
Right.
Are you cool with that?" And he was great. He said, "Yeah, of course. I'd much rather you did it than Cup and get somebody else in."
Yeah.
So I got the moral green light, so I was cool with that. But he wasn't. Yes, there's a Clive Barker Presents credit on the movie, but that comes later.
Right.
Um, we then made the movie. We can talk about that as well if you like, but jumping ahead, what happened was when Larry Coppin made the deal with Miramax to distribute the movie, at that point, Miramax, who also see the value in a brand name, said, well, we're going to put Clive Barker's name on this.
Yeah.
So at that stage, the movie was in the can. It was shot, though it wasn't shot by Tony Randall. That's a whole other story that we can get into if you want. Um, but the movie was in the can. So Miramax, how do I put this delicately without making my old friend of 50 years sound like a venal cash? But basically, they paid Clive to use his name on the poster, and they gave him an executive producer credit. And but then two things stop that being just a money run. Um, First of all, Miramax threw a little bit more money at it, so we did a reshoot. We shot the movie in North Carolina, but we then did a little reshoot in Los Angeles, and Clive was on board on set, literally, as a producer. I mean, it was still Tony Hickox shot the thing, but Clive was there for the reshoot, and like any good producer, had input into what we were shooting. And similarly, and in a way now, in retrospect, even more excitingly, um, Clive directed the Motorhead video in which Pinhead plays cards with Lemmy while they sing Hellraiser over, for the
I
closing
love
credits.
it.
Yeah. So obviously the video isn't in the movie. We just have the song going over the closing credits, but there was an MTV video, which again, nice bit of trivia, is the last time Clive directed Doug as Pinhead.
Ah,
Pinhead got to play cards with Lemmy,
yeah,
which is what we should all be jealous about. Never mind all the other stuff.
no,
But he got to play
100%.
cards. And Lemmy had a big bottle of bourbon right there on the thing. And I said to Doug, was that a prop? And Doug said, oh no.
That
That
must
was
have been a
Lemmy.
fun day.
Right. Um, so, but yeah, technically, so Clive shot the MTV video, and that was the last time he directed Doug in the Pinhead makeup. So
Oh,
again, when you do the horror trivia at your local pub,
this is it, isn't it?
you can,
It's all coming out.
yeah, you can do that. So, so because so Clive was an executive producer on the movie that was finally released, but it was, as I say, it was retroactive. Miramax brought him in after we'd wrapped it, but he was involved in the. It was on like a 3 or 4 day reshoot, I think.
Right.
Um, and it was mainly, I think it was to make, and again, times have changed. So we've got to be, hashtag me too. We've got to be careful here. But I think it was really to make the weird bondage scenes with Terry Farrell even creepier. I think that was mainly what the reshoot was, because Joey, but I never rewatch these movies, so I sometimes get plot details wrong. But it's the it's the bit where Pinhead is confronting his bifurcated self, the ghost of Elliot Spencer.
Yeah.
Spoilers if you haven't seen it, by the way. But to taunt him and frighten him, he tortures Joey, Terry Farrell's character. And I think either, oh, you know what? Let's blame it on Harvey Weinstein because he's already in jail for being a perv.
But this is the
So,
thing. Like when we mentioned that reshoots and yeah, we need to get a
yeah,
bit more extra, and then I'm like, Miramax, like yeah, this seems to be like this a bit
you
of
know
a
what? Yeah, seriously, until we just had that conversation now, I hadn't made that connection. I mean, look, the thing is, let's blame him on principle because then we don't have to blame
yeah,
anybody else.
absolutely, yeah,
But
100%.
that's actually not the truth because although I did met Harvey a few times while we were doing Hellraiser 4, but Dimension was Bob's imprint. Bob Weinstein, his brother.
Yeah,
Um, Dimension was Bob's imprint, so it was only Bob that we dealt with for the most part.
okay.
Um, but yeah, and I don't think necessarily it was Tony Hickox being pervy, Bob Weinstein being pervy, or Clive being pervy. Although Clive would embrace the perv moniker happily for the most part. But I think it was they just thought the scene was weak. It didn't seem threatening enough.
Yeah,
So I'm exaggerating
I,
when I
I
say
feel
that
like
the whole
wait,
reshoot was to was was Terry's bondage scenes. But I think, it primarily was that climactic scene is
Mm.
what the reshoot was. So
Well, you can forgive like a film based around hell and demons and whatever. Yeah. So it's like, it's you've got to make it as sinister as possible, ain't you? I suppose.
well,
So
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So there's no harm in that. But so going into obviously Pinhead's now becoming more central character. Um, he needs a lot more lines now. Like so. How did you like approach that? Like, so obviously, because you don't want it to be like kind of tarnishing what is already built as this, mystique character, and now is
Right,
almost front and center,
yeah,
and potentially moving this franchise forward for like a Freddy Krueger, Jason
right.
Voorhees, if you like. So, did you have to change the way you write or anything with that, or?
Not at that point, no. I know that there are some people who really love Hellraiser 3. Yeah, who like the other ones as well, but they're very fond of Hellraiser 3. But there is definitely a segment of Hellraiser fandom that think Hellraiser 3 is way too slick, MTV-ish, American, whatever
Mm,
words they use. They don't like the tonal shift from one and two to
mm,
three. And then those people, oddly, even though Bloodline was much more fucked around with by Miramax and is much more of a mess as a finished movie, the people who don't like Hellraiser 3 actually prefer Bloodline to it. But then, as I say, we've also got a little segment that love Hellraiser 3 and recognize Bloodline as the fiasco that it ended up being. Um, but I would say, in terms of, and I'm ready to be accused, as I say, of anything with the writing of Pinhead, but I don't think I ever turned him in to Freddy Krueger. I think there are aspects of the movie, like, the ersatz Cenobites that he creates, one of which I got to play, so I'm all for it. Um, but, Barbie and Camera Head and CD Head, obviously that seems because they're not real Cenobites, everybody. Get a fucking grip. Pinhead is
mm.
banned from here. He's trying to get back there. But I can see but I think Pinhead himself continues to be, the poet maudit that Elliot Spencer was, the doomed, melancholic First World War veteran who's
Yeah,
driven to the dark side as a consequence of his experiences in Flanders Field in World War One. Like that whole generation of that lost generation of people who were mentally fucked up by World War One. And Doug was thrilled that he got he got to play scenes without the makeup by playing Elliot as well. And I'm sure people if people want to post comments pointing out some Freddy Krueger like zingers in the movie, guilty. I'm sure you're right. But that's not my memory of it. I think I give Elliot, long maudlin speeches about being driven to the dark side, and I give Pinhead long, delighted speeches about how much he enjoys the dark side.
yeah,
And they might be long, I will grant you he gets a bit verbose in the movie. But I think tonally it's still clearly that character revealing more of him or itself, depending
yeah,
whether it's or Pinhead. So there's no doubt that Hellraiser 3 is. I always shorthand it by saying MTV. I say it's like it's an MTV horror movie. Um,
it,
Rapid cutting, brighter lights.
there's
Um,
like the Carrie style club scene as well. Like,
right.
there wasn't really anything like that in the first two, obviously. So it was just I can see where
Yeah,
people, like it's
yeah.
almost being Americanized and that, and then you've got this bloodbath of highlighting stuff. So But me personally, I'm a fan because it's one of the earliest ones I remember watching, if not the first one, to be fair,
Oh
because
yeah,
of my age.
right.
And then I probably went back onto the
Sure.
first two. Um, but yeah, I think, like you say, style wise, it's obviously completely different. But yeah, I'm just wondering, like, so what was now that kind of Dimension Miramax had their hands on it? Were they trying? Was their goal maybe to, because they released obviously a lot more sequels? Was it to be
Yeah.
like a Nightmare on Elm Street or something like that, or were they just, we've got the rights, let's just try and make a bit of money out of it? I mean,
Well, I think, but I can't speak to what happened after Bloodline.
right.
Because what are they? They made four more, five more.
But after Bloodline,
Scott Derrickson did Inferno. That was the first direct to video.
I think
And
there's
oh,
about five, isn't there?
And Doug wasn't in the last two, right? He wasn't in Judgment and he wasn't in Revelation.
No. So I
But there
think
was there was Inferno, Deader,
hmm.
Hellworld, and and I think another one. I think Doug did another one,
There's
but I
probably
can't.
four or five after Bloodline, isn't there? I think. Yeah,
Yeah,
straight to
I
video
think
stuff.
I think there's definitely at least five. But as I say, the last two,
Two,
Doug wasn't in the makeup. It was somebody, Stephen
yeah.
Collins in Revelation, I think, and Paul Taylor, Paul T. Taylor in Judgment. A lot of people like Judgment, which was written and directed by Gary Tunnicliffe, who'd been the guy who'd done after Jeff Portas was no longer doing the Hellraiser Pinhead makeup rather. Gary Tunnicliffe had he has applied the Pinhead makeup more than anybody else in history, and I think he got to write Revelations, which was the second to last one, but he didn't direct it. And then I think he wrote and directed Judgment, and both of those last two. I gather Judgment actually has some genuine fans in within Hellraiser fandom.
Yeah.
Partly, I think, for the character Gary himself plays, the Auditor, because he's kind of creepy and compelling. Um, but they had no money at all.
Mm,
So there are limits to what happens with them. And I think by the stage of those direct-to-video sequels, I think certainly by those last two, they were literally just spending the minimum amount they had to get a movie made in order to continue ownership of the franchise.
okay.
Um, but I don't think that was true of, I guess Inferno was number five. It was direct to video, so it was a lot. It was a much lower budget
Yeah.
than Bloodline, because Bloodline had not been technically Bloodline made its money back, but it wasn't a hit. So the reason it was the last theatrical one is that it opened very well. It had the biggest opening weekend of any Hellraiser movie, but then word word of mouth got out, and it ended up. Yeah, they didn't make a loss on it, but it wasn't. It didn't make as much money as three did.
Made them think twice, maybe moving forward, if
Yeah,
you
so
like.
they
Yeah.
just thought
Yeah.
we're not going to continue to make these theatrical. We're just going to do direct to video. But I know that a couple of the, I mean, Doug got a payday. Doug got to play Pinhead again and again and again. So, I was happy that that was happening. But obviously, after the experience with Bloodline, I wasn't going to be involved. And nor would Bob and Harvey have wanted me to be involved. They
Yeah.
loved me while I was writing Bloodline for them. And then they fucking hated me once once the film came out. And they hated Kevin Yeager as well. And if they bothered to think about it, they hated Clive too. But so it's not like they would have offered us, even if we'd wanted to. But
Yeah.
we were done by that point. Yeah.
Well, moving kind of away from Hellraiser, then briefly, In between Bloodline, you teamed up with Tony Randall again for Fist of the North
Yeah.
Star. Yeah, so that's a massive manga like franchise, isn't it? If you like, I mean, I
Oh,
didn't
I.
realize how big. I mean, I don't know a lot
No,
about.
neither did I.
Yeah, but
I would have been more, respectful and delicate about approaching it if I'd known.
so did you? Obviously, so now you know that you didn't know really much about it as a series. Um, how did it come for you and Tony to get involved in writing the first live action
It,
of it? Then and
yeah. Um, I mean, the way those things always do, I think. Whoever, huh, again, you see, I should have made notes at the time because I can't remember the names. I th I think it was Joel Soisson and Mike Leahy's company, US based company that had, optioned the rights or bought the rights, whatever it was, to the US rights to because it was a manga, but there'd been an animated movie as well of
yeah,
Fist of the North Star. Um, so as always happens with these things, a company, I'm not privy to the deal, leased or licensed or bought the rights to make a US version. And, I don't know, they hired us because we were cheap. I'm not really sure.
really,
Um,
as simple as that.
no, we weren't that cheap. I'm kidding. No, I think
Was
no, there
it?
was somebody. I think now, weirdly, there might be another Scouse connection here. I know that Tony Randall had a relationship with um I'm not sure what Robbie. There's a guy called Robbie Little who turned
Right.
out to be from Woolton in Liverpool, which is literally the next door district to Wavertree in Liverpool, which is where I'm from. But I did not know. I did not know Robbie growing up. Um, but he had I'm not exactly sure what, a distribution company, or it might have been like a bond company, which is kind of a film financing company that isn't technically a production company. I don't pretend to understand all this stuff, but Robbie acquired films, distributed them, and sometimes caused them to be produced, might be the way to put it, rather than
Right.
produce them himself.
Okay.
So I think that was the connection, that Robbie had a relationship with Joel and Mike's company, and because Tony and so I think Robbie might have said, "Try these guys,
Okay.
me and Tony." So I don't care about why, Matt. All I know is my agent calls up and
Yeah.
says somebody wants you to write a movie for him. So
So
um,
did you know nothing about the manga series then, or did you just write it? Did you have to do like a
well,
lot of obviously research into it and things, and then
yeah.
brute obviously?
Well, how much trouble am I going to be in if I answer that question honestly, Matt? So,
There's
that's the question, mate.
a lot of
Um,
passionate fans out there, isn't there?
no, there are. And no, look, I'll admit it. I was not familiar with the material, but two things. Um, I was told that it was very big and very popular, and there had been there'd been an earlier. Again, legally, I'm speaking loosely here.
Okay.
So I believe there had been an earlier attempt to make a live action movie. So there was a script, which technically we didn't do a rewrite of the script. It was a separate project. Actually, I mean, that script was written by a guy called Win McLaughlin, who's gone on to be, I believe, a very successful video game writer.
Okay.
Um, but, and again, yeah, connections all over the place because I think Tony knew Win. But so there'd been a script written for a live action version, for which for whatever reason, I'm losing the ability to speak English here, Matt. in real time as we watch. Um, and obviously there was the animated movie. So, I could at least see the animated movie, see, I can't pretend I read every issue of the manga
No,
because
there's
that
a
would
lot.
just be a filthy lie. Um, but I sampled, uh, I'm sure we still just called them comic books at that point. So, but I sampled the comic books, saw the movie, um, and so I, hand on heart, we came to the thing with respect, but it was a more generalized respect for martial arts movies, cinema from the East anyway, whether it
Mm,
was Hong Kong, whether it was John Woo and Choi Hark or Kurosawa from Japan or whatever. It's not like we were Western Philistines who weren't aware of great cinematic traditions coming out of the East.
yeah.
But so we came to it with respect, um, but but we certainly did not come to it as experts, put it that
No.
way. Um, and and I have to admit the big thrill for me, and again, this just speaks to age and fandom. Um, we got Malcolm McDowell to be in it. So little Alex from Clockwork Orange. So I got to meet Malcolm on set,
Oh,
and
is
Malcolm
it?
McDowell spoke my dialogue. So I don't care about anything else.
That's awesome.
That's it.
Yeah, that's mega. Was it quite a tough production then? Yeah. Obviously, were they expecting it to be bigger, maybe because of the fandom?
I,
So was production quite tough, or
I Tony Randall would be the better person because obviously Tony directed it
yeah,
because he co-wrote the script, by the way. That wasn't a solo script by me.
right?
Tony and I wrote the script together. Um, but you'd have to ask him with his director's hat on. If I don't, I don't believe it was tough. I mean, again, once the movie is shooting, unless there's a sort of emergency rewrite,
Right.
it's fun time for me. I just get to hang out on the set, you know,
That's
eat craft services and flirt with actresses. It's great.
sweet.
Um, so, and there were a lot of because by now we were all a little more experienced and we all had networks of relationships and stuff. So they were all like there are a couple of very large scale portrait paintings done in the style of Tamara de Lempicka, which were done for the movie by Steve Montiglio, who was my mate and the other guitarist in my band Invisible Cinema, which had formed in Los Angeles. But the reason I'd met Steve was he was Ashley Lawrence's boyfriend, and Ashley and I had become mates when we were shooting Hellbound, and that was when Steve and she were a couple. So I'd known him. I mean, Tony Randall was friends with him as well, obviously, but Steve and I were in a band together, so Tony doesn't fucking count. Um, but so Steve did those paintings for it. And God, am I right in saying I think Jack Aitken was the DP, shot it for us, director of photography, who sadly Jacques is no longer with us, but he also shot Wishmaster. So there's all kind, which I wrote in case people don't know that bit, but Jacques had also shot another movie that Tony had directed, and Steve had also done pictures for Buffy the Vampire Slayer, some paintings used in. So all I'm saying is there's all these sort of cross threads of everybody working together. So as far as I was concerned, um, I would go on set and nobody was tearing their hair out. It was made on schedule and on budget, as far as I know. Um, but to answer the heart of your question, I have to say I agree with you. I was surprised they were making it because it did have this huge uh, global fandom, but it hadn't at that stage had a huge made a huge cultural footprint in the US. So, I mean,
A
you
bit of
know,
a
I
gamble
could
then.
imagine it. I thought it was a gamble. Yeah, I mean, it was.
Yeah.
They weren't gambling with my money, so I didn't mind. You know, it was just um, we got paid. Um, but yeah, I got to admit, I was a little surprised that they thought there would be a domestic market at least. I mean, maybe they did the math correctly and figured that there would be enough interest, even if they hated it, there would be enough vested interest in the other markets to support the
Yeah.
movie. Um, but I don't know. It even at the time it struck me as, well, you know, I'm glad we get to do this, you know, because there were fun. It was like at one stage I was making jokes about it being the Brothers movie because we had Ron Howard's brother in it and we had Sean Penn's brother in it.
Yes.
And and there might have been a third one. I think I'm not sure. And the thing is, you know, Clint Howard and Chris Penn were both great in the movie. So I'm not. I don't mean to sound reductionist or funny when I say the Brothers movie, but and like I say, you know, Malcolm McDowell, um, and Costas Mandylor we had as the arch rival of
That's right.
Kentaro, I think,
Yeah.
and Gary
It's,
Daniels. Yeah.
with
So
the I mean, since its release and over
yeah.
time, it's grown into like a real cult following now. So I don't know if you've
For a live
realized.
action movie, for our version.
Yeah, I mean, like I think you find that over time, like the love of, like you say, the VHS era. You know,
Yeah, sure.
I feel like things that might fail in some way at a cinema, but in time, you've seen it numerous
Right.
times. The fact people fall in love with these movies
Oh,
on
yeah,
VHS and home
of
entertainment,
course.
and so
Yeah.
now it's kind of got like a bit of a cult following, and over time, I think a lot of fans have grown to appreciate it and for what it is. And I
Oh,
mean,
well,
so you
that's
know,
very nice.
I didn't realise if you'd knew that or what, but I think it's like with anything, it's growing into, you know, it's having like a bit of admiration for it and such, and it's got a nice
Oh,
cult
well, that's
following. So
I'm delighted for everybody else involved with it, and I'm very pleased as well. That's great to hear.
yeah,
No, I didn't know that because I think, I mean, nobody ever asks about that movie, by the way, on,
all
on all the
right.
other podcasts. So I don't think I've ever talked about it. Um, but because I think that, but you jog my memory, I don't think it even got theatrical release here. It wasn't that it didn't do well at the box office. I don't think they even released it. I think it got theatrical overseas,
Yeah, straight
but
to
I might
video,
be
and
wrong. Yeah, I
yeah, I
think it was
think it was
straight to
straight to video. Especially, I can only go by UK, and I know it
yeah.
went UK straight to video, but I weren't sure if the US it had a brief spell, maybe because of it being a
It,
manga or wherever. I weren't sure, so
yeah, maybe, but I don't think so.
no.
Because, well, you know why I don't think so? Because I don't even have a poster. And I do, you know, I do have posters of all the other movies I had that were theatrically released.
Right.
And they wouldn't not have given me a poster, you know. So I honestly that's my proof, weak as it is, that I don't think there was theatrical. I don't think there was a theatrical release. Um,
You'll have to hunt down the VHS then on eBay or something, and then
oh, yeah,
yeah, and
I
just
have
have
seen
that.
posters since, yeah, but I think they were just like in-store promo posters for. But yeah, I should get one. I should get one to add to the little gallery over there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Be
but
prepared to. It might cost you a few quid though, because I can imagine it being
really,
quite. Yeah, I bet it'd be quite sought
that's
after.
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like collectors, like getting the old video shop standees and cardboards,
Oh
cutouts,
yeah.
yeah,
Right.
and all that.
Right.
Like they're really high collectible now, and the more
Oh
obscure
shit.
ones are worth quite a lot of money.
Oh, you're killing me because back in my mum's house, my mum's been dead 14 years now. I had a massive, I mean, I was really impressed New World bothered to mail it to me. I had a massive Hellbound standee,
Wow.
life size of all
Jeez.
the Cenobites on a vast plate. I had to build it myself, it came in a like
No
an IKEA
way.
pack. And when I moved to the States in 92, you know, I just left it.
Wow. Jeez.
So, and if VHS store collectibles are now collectible, a 6 foot 7 inch Hellbound standee is shit.
I'm gonna have to try and find that on Google now. I need to see that. That sounds incredible.
I know a couple of people who had ones as well. In fact, this got nothing to do much with the movies, but um, there was, because I do books as well on the side,
Yeah.
which I know most Hellraiser fans aren't interested in. But there's a very talented cover artist, a lady called Lynn Hanson, um, and actually these weren't even for physical books. I did a couple of ebooks for a well-known horror publisher called Cemetery Dance, and Lynn did a couple of covers, and I emailed her afterwards and thanked her for one, which I thought was particularly great. And she said, "Oh, I'm so glad because this was my college room, my room at college," and attached a photo. And it was Lynn as like a 20-year-old student in her bedroom at college with the fucking Hellbound standee right next to her. So, so in other words, what she was saying was, "I'm glad you liked it because I was a Hellbound fan, so I'm glad I made you happy." But it was the first time I'd seen a photo of a standee, other than so. And I don't think Lynn has her standee anymore either. So there's two that have
Oh,
been lost. Could have been worth a few dollars. I
God.
don't know.
Yeah, I bet there'll be somewhere somewhere. Somebody who's probably found it. It'd be like say if you'd left it, someone will get it, and it's probably all gone around world somewhere. Someone will have its pride and joy somewhere. I can imagine. Yeah,
That's let us choose to believe that, Matt, because
yeah. I
that
hope
is a
so. It
sweeter
sounds.
version than as soon as I left the country, my mum said, "Well, I'm burning that fucking thing."
Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
I hope you don't go that
I
right.
don't know.
Um,
Yeah.
well,
Well, but wait, hang on. You're interested in me now. How valuable would be a Fist of the North Star promo badge? Because I've still got a handful of them.
who
They're not as
knows?
collectible, right?
Whoever's watching this, just put in the comments. If I'm assuming like get in touch with Peter Atkins on Instagram, and
And
maybe about send
and
some
he'll give
over.
you a 10% VHS Abyss discount. Actually, I've only got a couple of them left. I'm not sure, but they are in a draw.
Somebody will want in them,
I had a couple
100%.
of Wishmaster badges, a couple of Hellraiser 4 badges for some reason. When Miramax was still deluding themselves, it was going to be a hit. No badges for Hellbound or Hellraiser 3, but I had a couple of badges for Wishmaster, Bloodline, and Fist of the North Star.
Awesome.
Some, yeah. Yeah.
Well, Peter Atkins, unfortunately, we're gonna have to call it a day there. But yeah, this has been an absolute pleasure. I mean, like, yeah, just hearing the insight into like this incredible Hellraiser franchise. I could talk for hours about numerous other things, but unfortunately, we have a limited time. So,
Of course, of course.
but Peter Atkins, this is an absolute honour, and I can't thank you enough for doing this for us. I really appreciate it. But just one question: if you was to be offered to write a script for a current franchise, maybe a remake or a sequel, like which one would you love to do?
Ha. Um, well, that's a tough question because the things I love, I might want to mess with them.
Has there been anything ticking in my way? It's like, oh God, you know what? If I could get my teeth into, you know, a story for this certain franchise, has there been any over time that you'd?
To be honest, I mean, I realize this is a rotten way to end your episode, Matt. I'm
No.
sorry, because it would be great, you know, if I could just say I want to write a Halloween movie, then that would be a nice. So why don't we pretend I do? Well, why don't we just say, oh, Friday the 13th?
Oh, there you
Oh,
go. I'd love to
no,
see
I
your
mean,
vision of a Friday the 13th. Like personally, like I think it's
yeah, the problem
needed.
is, but I like the blabbermouths, don't I? You know, Wishmaster, Pinhead. I like to give them some shtick.
Yeah, I suppose.
So,
Yeah.
so it'd be more like, it- so if we limit if we limit ourselves to the verbal monsters, Hannibal Lecter, Dracula, you know, I
Oh,
don't know.
sweet.
But I don't know.
A Peter
I mean, I
Atkins
don't.
Dracula movie. Like, yeah, I'd like to see that.
Or
Yeah,
as most people would say, what? Another Dracula movie?
yeah, but
Because
played by Doug Bradley. Like, yeah, we haven't seen Doug Bradley as Dracula.
oh,
He'd smash that
well,
out of the park.
he would. He
Yeah,
would. Well,
yeah,
let's get that set up, Matt. I think you're
yeah.
right.
You ring
Let's
your
start a
mate.
GoFundMe.
Ring your mate and tell him, hey, I've been
Oh,
thinking
he'd be
about something.
willing.
Yeah, I think
He'll
he'd
do it.
smash
The
that.
problem is, you know, I think he would smash it too, and it would be lovely to work with him again. He actually there's this is not an attempt to plug something for people to buy, just in terms of the long-standing affection Doug and I have for each other. He did do an audio book of one of my novels a couple of years ago, so it was just really nice after because last time we worked together was Bloodline, obviously. Um, so just hearing his voice say my words again on the audio book of Morningstar a few years ago, we did that. That was great.
Oh, sweet.
So yeah, we'll get to work on that. Doug Bradley is Count Dracula in uh
A
but
script
yeah,
by Peter Atkins.
but
Yeah.
anyway, Matt, yeah, right. Matt, thank you very much. But it's been a real pleasure, really enjoyable conversation. So keep the VHS flame alive. That's fantastic. And
Yeah. Oh, mate.
thanks again. Thanks
Yeah,
very
thanks so,
again.
so much. Yeah. So I appreciate this. And yeah, thank you very much. That's been an absolute
All right,
honor.
mate.